Jesus. Till we shift the culture. We heal the sick. We will raise the dead. Transform the nations. Till we hear well done. To follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back.
Mic check, mic check. Mic check. We're good. It's already too late to. It can't turn back now. No more foolishness. No more laziness. It's already too late to. Can't come back now. I will never, never. What's up, Latin? How you doing, man? I will never, never, never. I will never, never. Never turn back. No, no. No, no. We will burn the world. We will spend the billions. We will spend for Jesus. Till we shift the culture. We will heal the sick. We will raise the dead. Transform the nations. Till we hear well done. Oh man. The Legends of History. This channel I'm watching today. Hopefully people getting excited, man. Man, I'm telling you, there's a kind of joy. There's a kind of joy, man. There's a kind of joy you can't. Ah, man. It's different. Oh, my goodness. Oh man. All right, here we go. So today, what's up, Overdose? Today is Bible Story Day. We're gonna hear some we're gonna listen to some. Actually, last time I realized that like it might make more sense to share the Bible stories in like chronological order, like in terms of like the timeline. So that's what I'm gonna try to do, you know, start from Adam. It might even help me personally because I like to remember the stories in order. So the idea is probably we go through the Adam story, then we go through the Noah story, then we go through the Abraham story, then we go through the Jacob story. No, do we go through Jacob's story before we go through Moses' story? Well, see, that's part of the reason why. What's up, Screw? Just basically like go in order of the different stories, just go down and down. What am I being confused about if Jacob came before Moses? Yeah, Jacob definitely came before Moses. So yeah, Jacob's story, then the Moses story, then the that we've already, because we read Samson. I think it was Samson we did last time, so we could skip that one when we get there, and then we'll go to like the Kings, the David, and we'll go in that order. Just go through those stories. I mean, at the end of the day, if at the least you could learn a lesson from for yourself from those people's lives. But before we get into any of that, hopefully you guys are having a good day so far. I feel like this is a lot nicer. It's a lot nicer because you guys get through, most of your day before we show up in the stream together. So everybody has a chance to like, something has happened in your day basically before you get here. So that's nice. Let me listen to this instrumental. Oh, my audio keeps going bad, man. And I think it's my audio interface that's like, all right, there we go. Like, it just keeps on like just crapping out. But yeah. So how's everybody's day been? What have you guys been up to today? While you guys are responding, for me, woke up this morning. My morning's always the same because my wife's going to work and we're just preparing everything for her to be on her way. Once that's done, I usually come to my computer and try to, whatever is on my mind from the previous day, I try to go sort it out. And for me today, it was, I said I was going to apply for some jobs today, which I got on my computer and started looking for the job. And then I quickly realized that, well, there's one more little thing in my jobs. Wait, what? Oh, sorry. But yeah, there's this one specific program that I haven't learned yet, and it seems to be big all of a sudden in terms of all the jobs are asking for it. So I'm gonna work on like maybe making a project with that software or that app or service. I guess online service is what it should call, what that should be called. But yeah, once I do that, that should be the last part in my resume, and then I'm just gonna continue applying for jobs. But that was what I did first, and I wasn't too happy, so I ended up just going to get some breakfast because I wasn't too happy with the fact that, I couldn't just spam apply for jobs and I wasn't already like qualified for everything that I was looking for. But either way, I left that alone, went, got some breakfast, came back, actually took a nap. Because I didn't sleep early yesterday. Actually, I was looking at, that's something that I feel like if I was doing it on stream, you guys would have enjoyed it as well, because I was looking at slides basically, because I wanted to get one for my wife. And apparently, okay, if any of you guys have worn Yeezy slides before, you probably know how comfortable it is, which I have, but I didn't know that there was nothing else in the market like it, which was very interesting. So I ended up in the YouTube tunnel of just trying to figure out is there, since Yeezys came out, have there actually been no other slides that are as comfortable? And pretty much it seems like that's the case. Well, I was just looking at what else is available. Also, I didn't even know that Yeezys don't make them anymore, that's also an interesting fact. But either way, that was what I spent a lot of last night doing. Ended up sleeping late, just checking those things out. And then, so I took a nap today. Oh my goodness. I ended up taking a nap today. to regain some of the sleep I missed from last night. And then got back on here, started figuring out my resume, started looking up a few things, trying to understand, you know, the new app that I'm going to be using, you know, stuff like that. But yeah, it's been a not too bad day, not too stressful day. Well, I guess you guys' days haven't been going. So at least I've shared mine. I'm just gonna get into this Bible story for today, and we'll see. Hopefully we can finish it. It's like 30 minutes. You guys know me, when I'm watching these videos I'd be pausing all the time, so I think we should be able to cover at least in an hour. I could time myself. In an hour we should be able to be done with it. All right, let me turn off the music and see what we got. Even though I was gonna think of actually keeping that on while I'm listening to this, but let's see. They might have their own music.
In our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea.
Definitely some music will be a banger with this. Let me turn it down for myself. Yeah.
And the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created.
I find it very interesting. I mean, nobody understands God, right? But the idea that God made man in his image is so, like, in God's idea of mankind, he must have really liked, like, he must have loved what he knew man was going to become, because making man in his image, in his own, making man to look to, in any sense, whether it's how we look, whether it's how we talk, whether it's how we are spirit beings, how we are structured, whatever it is, like making something in your image is, I mean, for those people who have kids, you guys can even have a deeper understanding than I do about this. But like, for me, I even through like my nephews and my nieces, through my nephews, like literally seeing a kid, one of my nephews, when he was born, if you see his baby picture, he literally looked like me as a baby. Like, I can imagine what it would be like having a kid of my own, like just literally creating another me. So insane. I think it's so, like, just this sentence alone, it might seem like just something to just scheme over, but it's so, you can only imagine how much love God must have had for the idea of mankind, for him to create mankind in his own likeness. Says here, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness. Uses two different words to describe it. I wish maybe at some point too, whenever we're reading stuff like this, I'll go into like the actual like Hebrew word that was used and see like even deeper meanings to what God told the author like to write down, because making mankind in his image and in his likeness, we human beings, literally that's the way that we were made. It's crazy. So that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals and over all the creatures that move along the ground. That's another interesting part, because clearly when people see sharks in the water right now, we don't really feel like we've got rulership over it. We're running away from those things. And as if someone that's reading this might be like, oh, so why would it say in the Bible then that we're supposed to rule if we're not ruling? Like I always say, anything that seems like it's not happening right now, the answer is in the same book. This is just a different time. But anyways, let's listen to this guy. I feel like I wish I could read it instead of this guy reading it.
With mankind in his own image, in the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. The story of Adam and Eve and the creation of man is probably one of the most recognized biblical stories throughout all of Scripture. It is the first story that appears in the Bible in the book of Genesis, which details the beginnings of pretty much everything, from the beginning of sin and evil to the very first murder and death. It also features elements of the...
Oh, he's reading this word for word, I think. So the story of Adam and Eve and the creation of man is probably... Oh, he's reading this word for word. So that means I could probably read this myself. And then we don't have to, like, I could be the one talking instead of him if he writes literally everything that he says down. But we'll see though. The story of Adam and Eve and the creation of man is probably one of the most recognized biblical stories throughout all Scripture. It is the first story that appears in the Bible in the book of Genesis, which details the beginning of pretty much everything from the beginning of sin and evil to the very first murder and death. I'm good, thank you. And yourself? Just eating. I'm so full. What did you eat, man? I've been having some eating food issues lately, but I think I might just have a fix for it. We'll see how it goes. I'll give you my report at the end of the week if it worked or not. Had a pizza, what's on it? Tell me you had some pineapples, man. If you didn't have pineapples, don't respond. But I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Today's been a bit of a weird day, but yeah, can't complain. All the same, can't complain. It's not been too bad. Buffalo chicken, yeah, okay, now you're talking. But you gotta have chicken, buffalo sauce, pineapple, and you could have like some ground beef. It all depends. You could have some ground beef. You could have some. It depends on how you want to mix it up. But you gotta have one more meat in there. But you definitely need the pineapple. Yeah. I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good, bro. It's when I say it was a tough day, it was just like I said earlier, I had a plan for today. I wanted to come into today, apply for a bunch of jobs, but instead of doing that, I ended up noticing that there was another, which I feel like is gonna keep happening, and I'm gonna have to just not worry too much about it, but that there's another tool that I need to learn how to use before applying for jobs, because that's what's in demand right now. So I'm gonna have to start learn that, practice that before I move on with my applications. But anyways, all of that aside, like, I'm good. It's just that was a little wrench in my plan. I still applied for, I found some jobs that fit my current skills and I applied for those, but I'm just on the I'm trying to figure out that next step, that's all. But I'm chilling though. I also had myself I had some cereal and a croissant with some scrambled eggs, which my scrambled eggs lately, they've been slapping. Very proud of myself for that. But yeah, that's what I had for breakfast. I end up eating brunch most days because I like to eat the same thing my wife ate for breakfast. So she eats in the morning, I eat like around 12 noon. So I ate that, and then maybe I'll eat something for dinner. We'll see. I used to try to eat my heavier meals in the beginning of the day and eat my less heavy meals later on, but I kind of fell off that idea. Well, all the same, all good, man. All right, let's keep going on with this. So it also features elements of the, I wonder what the general idea, what people think when people read sin, right? I wonder what people think sin is. If what the mind processes as sin for people who don't read the Bible. Like when you hear sin, I'm guessing most people just think like, oh, bad stuff. But I guess through what lens? Because if you just think bad stuff, then if you know what the sin is and it's bad stuff, then do you feel like you're sinning? But when I ask some of these questions to people, like, I feel like the response is usually like, I don't think that far. I feel like maybe consciously people don't think that far, but in your subconscious you do. You might push it to the side, but you get somewhere. You get to some of those levels of what I'm saying. You just don't dwell on it. I think that's the term, is people don't dwell on it. But anyways, it also features elements of the fall of mankind, the fallen state of the world, and outlines the need for a redeemer of some kind. Okay. Yeah, it's literally all gonna be on a parchment. I'm gonna mute this and I'm gonna read it. If this guy has a thing like this for every book, that would be for every story, that would be perfect for me. So in the beginning of Genesis, we're told that there was nothing and that God created the heavens and the earth. So now this is the question where Screw always asks me about. Says in the beginning of Genesis, we are told that there was nothing and that God created the heavens and the earth. How I would describe the way that it's told actually is that in the beginning, God was and there was nothing else. And then God created the heavens and the earth. Because some people this wording could confuse some people. So it says, he established the night and day cycle upon the earth by creating light, and also creates the sky, the water, and the land upon it. Upon the land, he creates vegetation and plants which can produce fruit, and also introduces the sun, the moon, and the stars. After this, we see God create fish and creatures of the waters before creating birds that fill the sky. God is so pleased with these creations that he decides to also create land animals that move across the terrain freely. It's an interesting description because he's saying so pleased with it that he does that, which is cool, I know where he's getting that from. He's talking about the fact that when God made all these things, he said, and I saw that it was good. He saw that it was good. He said he saw that it was good. Now this narrator is trying to use that and then say, well, because all those things were so good, he kept on making more stuff. That's not exactly what the Bible says, but it's a fun way to look at it. Okay, and then it says, lastly, he creates mankind, where, as stated in Genesis 1:26-27, he makes mankind in his own image and likeness with the intention that they will rule over the animals that he has bestowed upon the earth, which is the part we read in the beginning. We are then given even more confirmation of this in Genesis 27-28, which indicates that God intended for the world and all its contents to be ours, and that animals and plants are for our consumption, saying, God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Now it's interesting because at this time, right, I'm just painting a picture. There's land, there's vegetation, there's animals and stuff, but the setting of what we're talking about is the Garden of Eden. That's what we're talking about here, is the Garden of Eden. But when he says be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth, now this is my first time of thinking, like, so was God expecting, based on the way he defined things to be before, he would have wanted people to spread from that Garden of Eden into other parts of the world? I've always seen it as like we would have all been living on the garden if things went the way God would have wished it to go. Or I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but basically the way God planned for things to go before man, messed up the plan. That means there was actually this idea of not filling up Eden and then going out and filling up the rest of the world. That's so different from how I've looked at it, because every time I've looked at the creation story, it's always been about everybody living on the Garden of Eden, and this is the first time I'm seeing this to mean that it's not just about people living there, it's about more. So it says, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth and all the birds in the sky and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. This part's interesting because this is another thing people talk about when they're like, because some people say, how is God okay with animals eating other animals, or man eating other animals? You know how some people who are vegetarians say they don't eat meat because they don't want violence against other animals. Well, in God's perfect world, he just wanted us to eat plants. Even the animals were just eating plants. And now I know there's gonna be some science person or some historian who's gonna be like, how did dinosaurs eat plants back then? No shot, they were eating plants. Well, even now we eat plants as human beings, but we prefer meat. We enjoy meat. Maybe I shouldn't say prefer, but we enjoy meat. However, we still can. It's still a choice. We could choose to eat meat or not eat meat. Let me change this setting real quick. Empty cup. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's see. But that's definitely something that I know people talk about. It's like, it's almost impossible, but it's one of those things where we could, if it could have been that way, it could have been that way. There would be no animals killing animals. There will be no man killing animals for food anyways. I wonder if they would even kill animals for sports, because I'm pretty sure that's a thing as well, that people kill animals for sport. Oh yeah, like for birds, right? I don't think all the bird shooting thing, I don't think it's only for food. I think people also do it for for sport as well. But at least now we can see what God's original design was. Okay, so it is chapter 2 of Genesis which first sees the introduction of Adam. We're told that neither shrub nor plant had sprouted, because not only had God yet to send rain upon the earth, but there was also no one to tend to the plants, either to ensure their proper growth. What's interesting here is that we get to see two of the first creation stories featured in Genesis. We're told in Genesis 2:7, then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. Another interesting thing about this is that's where people get confused as well, because chapter 1 gives a full description of the stages of God's creation, and then it goes back in chapter 2 to give more detail on some of the parts of it. Like it said earlier, God created the vegetation, but then in chapter 2 it talks about how, well, there was no man to tend it yet, and there was no rain yet to be able to make the seed grow. And then it's talking about how God created man, and it talks about how he created man as well, after he's already talked about it in chapter 1. So the writing style here is also very, very interesting. Oh, okay. So Adam's role here was to serve as a caretaker for the Garden of Eden, which we learn from God in Genesis 2 verse 15. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. Again, this is another thing. This is another idea based on what I was talking about before in terms of this garden where Adam was. There was no other Adam in another part of the world where the whole world was created. So that's why this place, I always thought about it as like this is where everything would have happened. But logically, the more people were born, the more people that were on the earth, they would move out of the garden, and they would have just continued to make those other places tended the same way that they tended to the things in the Garden of Eden. So it's just a unique perspective that, like I said, for me, I never processed that. However, in 2 verse 15 of Genesis, God warns him not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, for if one were to eat from it, they would surely die. This is one of 2 trees that are named in the Bible, the other being the tree of life. So there's 2 trees, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It's interesting though that the one that God is warning them about is the one that has knowledge of good and evil. The tree of life is also there. Actually, now that got me curious. We're going to open the Bible for the first time today. Let's see. So the Lord God made all kinds of trees grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food. Oh yeah, Inferno. Hey, I'm happy you're at least able to like enjoy, because like I always say, man, these are stories. The only difference between like me reading it and some people reading it is just, it's not just a story alone, it's also history. Like it's literally a history book. And when I mix the fact that it's history with the fact that it's a beautifully well written story, then I realize that some of the things that happened in this historical book are supernatural things. That's what now encompasses my entire like understanding of the world, my relationship with people, my relationship with God, and things like that. But at the end of the day, these are beautifully written stories, and these are stories that are reading from years and years and years ago. Like the when these things we're reading is long time ago. I don't even think we have a lot of like, I don't think we have any other book that's written that old. Actually, I'm curious. I don't know. This is just, I don't know. But I wonder how many books are as old as this book that we can actually read today, like a full book that's as old as this. So we are getting like some very, very ancient information, and it's so well written too. It's really nice. So it says, in the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So interestingly, both trees were in the center. You know, when you think about like, so this is okay, let me just digress a little bit, because when you're thinking about the idea of God made man, God made the garden, it was good, he put them there to tend to it, then he gave them an instruction, says, don't do this one thing, do these things, you know, tend to the garden, eat this kind of food, all of that stuff. But the fact that this tree is in the center of their garden and it's the thing that they're not supposed to do, this goes back to when people talk about, when I'm trying to explain free will. Because if everything was just perfect for Adam and there was no reason for him to do something wrong, like there was no way for him to be disobedient basically, then there's no real proof that the love that he has for God is actually genuine. But at the same time, like God putting it in the middle, it's a real test. This thing, I've told you to not do it, but it doesn't matter where you go on this garden, you're gonna see that thing that you're not supposed to do. so that if you do actually follow my advice, I know that it was hard, you went through it, but you came out successfully. Very, very interesting stuff. The fact that it's in the middle of the garden and there were 2 trees and there's one that they said don't touch. Very, 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 very interesting. This just talks about the waters that were flowing from the garden. The Lord God took man, put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. And the Lord God commanded the man, you are free to eat from any tree in the garden. Any tree, including that tree of life that's right next to the tree. I'm curious. I don't want to just say it as a blanket statement, but it says you're free to eat from any tree in the garden. That means there were 2 trees in the middle of this place. Remember, it says life and knowledge of good and evil. These 2 trees were there. They could have chosen to eat from the tree of life, but the one that had the word evil in there is the one that looked, and the one that they said they should not take from is the one that that's more interesting. Because I'll just think about it like the tree of life. I wonder what you get when you eat from the tree of life. Anyways, so you're to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you will certainly die. Like, this is just too interesting to me, and I don't know what you guys think, but there's literally a tree that's called Tree of Life. Then there's a tree of knowledge of good and evil that God says if you eat from this tree, you will die. So there's a tree for death and a tree for life. But the one that they're attracted to eat is the one that can lead to death, not the one that can lead to life. That's so crazy. This is why I like reading these verses again, and I try to read it in a way that because I have a lot of knowledge about this, right? This is not my first time reading it, but I like to read it newly, like I'm reading it for the first time, because that's so crazy. Yes, I know it wasn't because if it was tree of life and tree of death, maybe there's a chance they might have just been like, okay, I'll try to eat from the tree of life, not the tree of death. But still, God says, this is the tree of life. They're both at the center of the entire garden. This one, though, it says knowledge of good and evil, but it leads to death. So you have 2 options. Well, you have 3 options. Every other fruit in the garden, every other tree, that's 1. The tree of life, that's 2. And then there's the 3rd one, the one that they said leads to death, called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's the one that you're interested in. And it's so synonymous with like life these days, man. You give people a bunch of options, and it just seems like the negative one, the bad one, is the one that tickles your fancy the most. The one that's most destructive is like, what if? It's so crazy. But let's keep it going. God then begins to believe that Adam shouldn't be alone. He decides that man should have a helper that accompanies him, and we get a glimpse of how much God cares about man in that he takes into consideration how he is feeling. That's another interesting thing. Like, God created man, didn't just leave him there just like whatever. He's still looking like, I don't think like this man being alone, basically the Bible literally says, God said it is not good for man to be alone. Mind you, remember I said before, I'll actually show it to you guys real quick. I'm going to show you how the first verse goes. So basically, so God created the land and the seas, and God saw that it was good. Then he created the vegetation, and God saw that it was good. And then he created the light and the darkness, and God saw that it was good. Of course, you get my point. As God is creating all these things, he's seeing, oh, that, yeah, that's good, that's good. He created the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and he saw that it was good. He created the animals on the ground, and God saw that it was good. And now God creates mankind, right? But then we have to wait a little bit to be able to see what God thought about what the first. So everything good, right? And then God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. So now everything, after he made man and he looks at everything, it was very good. But then if we look in the next part, all of a sudden something's not good anymore, and this is the first time he says something was not good. Let's look at what it says here. It says it says here, right here, first time God says something wasn't good. The one thing he said that wasn't good is it's not good for man to be alone. So there's good, but the one thing that ain't good is for man to be alone, and that's the reason why he created Eve. I just think it's very, very interesting, because everything that God did was good, but at the same time, God is a relational being, right? That's why they say God is love, because he has love within himself. You might have heard the term God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. That's God, even within his own person, has three, within his own being has three persons that he's able to fellowship with, he's able to communicate with. And within that, he sees the perfection of love, being able to love other things. So when he creates man, and he creates man in his own image as well, he also sees that for man, it's not good unless there's that person to be able to express love with, which is very, very profound, because he's literally said, giving us a blueprint of how he expects love to be shared right there. Well, let's go back. Sorry for the segue right there. I just had to point it out, because he's talking about how he says God sees that it's not good for man to be alone. Not only did he see that, that's the first time God says something wasn't good. He decides that man should have a helper that accompanies him, and we get a glimpse of how much God cares about man, in that he takes into consideration how he is feeling. Not even just how he is feeling, he knows what's best for man. Like, it's not just about how, I wouldn't actually agree with this, the way that this person describes it, but I understand what they're trying to say. It's not about how man was feeling, it's about how God actually knows what is best for the man, so he provides it. He's saying this is what you need, not, oh, I think this is how you're feeling, or this is how you're feeling. No, he knows what's good. He understands that Adam, with no one to talk to, would likely have been lonely, and so decides to bring all the animals to Adam to find a suitable companion. He also gives Adam the honor of naming each of the animals, but from amongst them there is not an appropriate mate. Imagine a life like this, where you're just chilling on a lion, like you're just chilling, like you chilling on a lion, bro, and the lion's just there, like the same way you'd be with people chill with like dogs and stuff right now, and cats. Imagine like that's how much like we had that rulership and authority, and that dominion to where even lions come around us and they respect that there's, the same way you'll see like a really big, tall, buff guy and you'll just like behave yourself so you don't get knocked out kind of thing. Like that's the way that's the way that they would have viewed us back then as well. So God puts Adam into a deep sleep, and whilst Adam is sleeping, he removes one of his ribs and then closes up the gap with flesh. From this rib, God created woman, and he brought her to Adam. We are told that Adam is pleased with God's efforts to make him a companion, as he states that this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man. What's interesting about this, like I said before, God knew what was good for man. God created that thing that was good for man. Now, when man saw that thing that God knew was good, he also agreed with it, because there was no, oh, I don't like that one. The way you take a kid to the mall and you get them a shoe, they say, no, I don't want that. No. God knows what you need. So when you see the thing that God has created for you, now you know that he's saying, this is the bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. This is an acknowledgement thing. Like he's now knowing what God already knew, that this is what's perfect for him. And when God gives you something like that, when God gives you the perfect thing that you need, that's the only thing you could say is, this is what I need. Because simply put, this is it. That's the only response you can have in that kind of situation. Let's keep on going. Both man and woman were naked in the Garden of Eden during this time. They felt no shame, for mankind knew not what shame was. Interestingly, the Bible gives us an interesting insight about why relationships between a man and woman form, telling us that is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. So let me see what he's saying here, because I kind of got lost in this paragraph here. It says, interestingly, the Bible gives an interesting insight about why relationships between a man and a woman form. Okay, so he's basically saying, like, the Bible is saying the purpose for why he created Eve for Adam. The reason for that union, that relationship, the reason why he brought two of them together. Because, funny enough, after God created Eve, he brought her to him. Like, it wasn't just like, oh, he created and then Adam had to go find her. No, he actually brought her to him. But anyways, still, God is now saying, why, what's the purpose for that union? He says, this is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. Basically saying the purpose of that union, when that happens, let me look for the actual verse right here. So after he said, this is the bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, he says that is why a man leaves his father and his mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. Okay, then he talks about the no shame part. This is where I was saying, where he said he brought her to the man. He actually brought her to him. Okay, I thought I was able to get some more understanding on it, but basically in this part, God created marriage in this particular chapter right here for the woman. Let's keep going. In the next chapter, we see the downfall of Adam and Eve, simply entitled The Fall, as we see the emergence of the serpent. Now, while the serpent in this passage is referred to as the serpent only, many believe that this serpent is actually Satan or Lucifer. Some theories on this originate from the fact that in Revelations, Lucifer takes on the form of a dragon to battle Archangel Michael and the heavenly host in a war for the heavens. So, again, some people know this story and they've heard of the snake that deceived Adam and Eve, but most people don't know what that snake represents or why that snake was even there, or why, you know, like there are a lot of questions that people have in terms of the snake. But I think few people who have heard about the Bible in some sense do know that the serpent was the devil in the form of a serpent speaking to Eve in this case. But let's keep it rolling. A dragon, being a serpentine creature, might give some inkling as to why many people believe this. After all, we know that Lucifer can change forms as he does in Revelations, and seeing as he can transform into a dragon, why wouldn't he be able to transform into a snake? While God banished Lucifer from the heavens and cast him down to earth, some ideas suggest that he donned the serpent disguise and snuck into the garden with the sole purpose of revenge. And what better revenge could he have against God than to turn his most cherished creation against him? Again, while Genesis here does not give us confirmation as to whether the serpent was Lucifer or not, it does give the serpent a motive, or otherwise he just appears to be an evil being that has no reasoning to turn Adam and Eve against God, unless the serpent is simply inherently evil. Some even argue that the serpent was created by God to be evil on purpose, so that he could test if mankind would turn against him if given the chance. I don't know about that last theory. What I do know is that after, well, let me keep it short. The devil was on earth because he was cast out of heaven because he was seeking to be like God, which is interesting because he knew why he was cast out of heaven was because he was trying to be like God. And what does he do? What does he tempt creation with, Adam and Eve with? The exact same thing. He tells them, you want to be more like God? I'll give you the ability to be, I can show you how you can be more like God. And that's like such a like repeated event where people just want to, people are not satisfied. You know, people are not satisfied. People always want to seek this higher purpose. Even when God has given you your purpose, you're seeking something else. And not only are you seeking any purpose, you're seeking to be like the one that created you. It's an interesting premise, but that's my understanding of it. Is the devil was, I know, well, that's what I know in the Bible, is that the devil was cast out of heaven because of his thinking of trying to be like God. And then when he got cast out, now he's on earth, and he did the same thing, influenced man to want the same desires that he wanted, which led to their fall as well. So basically the fall of the devil and the fall of man came basically from looking for the same thing. What Genesis does tell us is that the serpent is the most craftiest of God's creations. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? You know, when we were talking the other day about intrusive thoughts, and this is a great example of the kind of things that the devil can put in your mind. Like, he knows where he's going. He knows he wants you to eat this fruit, and he knows what the fruit represents, because he wants you to do the thing that God said you shouldn't do. Simple. But he comes in and he's like, oh wait, did God say you shouldn't eat from any of the tree in the garden? If he's just trying to ask a regular question, why didn't he ask about any other thing? Why couldn't they just eat any tree else? Why is it that one out of everything that's in the whole garden? Why is it that one tree is asking you about? You already know that this one don't have good intentions. Anyways, another interesting point to make of Genesis here is that the serpent appears to single out Eve in his attempts to corrupt mankind. after Eve tells him that they may not eat the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil because they will die, the serpent scoffs. My audio is going bonkers again. The serpent scoffs, telling her, "You will not certainly die." Like, come on, you really? You think you're gonna die? Come on, you're not gonna die. For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be open and you will be like God. This is even my first time also of thinking of the fact that like this whole be like God thing is the same thing that Lucifer present. He presented the same thing he had in his mind to Eve for her to have that in her mind as well. Like, it's so crazy because again, the way he's phrasing it is like, God knows what you will think. God knows what you will be. Making it seem like you're the one that's thinking, oh, I could be like God. My eyes could be open. The way that it's phrased is in a way where you will then turn his ideas into your own thoughts. Knowing good and evil. Let's keep going. The serpent doesn't appear to address Adam here at all. And through this, some believe that it is Eve who facilitated the serpent's plan. For it was she who was convinced otherwise, and she who hands Adam the fruit from the tree. It is also she who reaches for the fruit, and she who takes the first bite. Genesis tells us, when the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. Oh, wow. Sorry, I had to respond to a message there. So where were we? It says, yeah, so then the eyes of both of them were opened and they realized they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves. My goodness, I need to fix that back on screen. I just realized that the audio from the video is playing instead of the video, like this actual video. So give me a second, guys. Let me fix that real quick.
The eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. Notice how Adam doesn't resist either. There is no passage in Genesis where he tries to dissuade Eve, nor any writing where we see Adam advise against this course of action. Through this, Adam is just as bad as Eve, as he is quick to join her in doing the one thing that God had warned him against. We are also told here that in eating the fruit.
Okay, it's interesting how this is also like, I guess this is part of why I'm reading this too, is because we did talk about it yesterday. Fleur was asking a question about it, and I think, yes, it is definitely interesting how the way this story goes. You could say, oh, Adam took the fruit and she gave it to Eve took the fruit, Eve gave it to Adam. But I think it's so significant to realize that if you're trying to look for each person's weakness here in this story, Eve's weakness is she was susceptible to the ideas that the serpent was putting in her mind. Adam's weakness was Eve, because before this part was written, Adam wasn't looking for any fruit tree to eat. He was doing everything. There's no hint that he actually was thinking about anything to do with this tree. Now, he did know the law, so it wasn't like, oh, he ate from this tree on accident. He knew he wasn't supposed to, and he wasn't. But when his wife gave him to eat, he ate. They don't even give, there's no sentence in between. It's literally his wife gave him to eat and he ate. Like, at least for Eve, it was, well, the serpent came and asked her, are you supposed to eat of this tree? She said, well, we're not supposed to eat of this particular tree. And then he says, come on, God knows that you're not gonna die if you eat from that tree. Long passage. But for Adam, his wife just said, take, eat. She ate that stuff. He ate it so fast. So I mean, for me, one of the things that I learned from that as a man that has a wife as well is just to remember that, like, that's why it's important for you to, you know, think about the people that are around you as well, because the people that are around you will affect you. They will affect your decisions, how you see things, all of that, they will. So it's important, like for him, like for me now as a Christian, praying for my wife, for her to be able to see the right things, do the right things, for her to make the right decisions, make the right choices, because whatever choices she makes, whatever things she's thinking, is gonna affect me and it's gonna affect us as a house as well. So it's important that when I'm thinking and I'm praying for her too, because she definitely has influence. If anything, that's another way I would look at it, is the devil knew if he came through Eve, because, you know, it's well, just follow my thought process for a second. It's possible that the devil goes and talks to Adam. Adam tells his wife, devil says we should eat it. She tells him no, and it's done. Because if she said no, it's over with. There's no eating happening. The devil knew she had bigger influence, and that's why he deceived her. He knew he didn't even have to do any work on Adam. She'll do it for him. So it just, to me, again, it just shows how much influence a woman has, because, and why it's important for you to look out for them, because if you don't look out for them first and they get influence, they could influence you as well. Simply put. But very, very, very interesting.
Fruit, Adam and Eve don't die, but as the serpent had told them, they gain some form of insight in that their eyes are opened.
That's also very interesting. The lie. So what the serpent did too was more of, he told them something that was true, But the only reason he told them those true things is so that they could be disobedient. So yes, when they ate the fruit, they didn't actually die in the way that they were expecting. That's the difference. Is, oh yeah, it's like, you're not gonna die, which seems like it's a contradiction. God said you would die, he's saying you wouldn't die, then you actually eat it and you don't die, and it's like, wait, did God lie? No, you just didn't die in the way that you thought you would die. That's what happened. And my point, I'm just bringing out the fact that, like, in this story, there are things that, let's just keep using the serpent. The serpent can tell you, the devil can tell you, that would make you, it's not that the things that are being said are wrong. It's just, where is it leading you to? On the surface, it might seem like, oh, it's just, I should go out and have some fun. Well, again, like I always use the example of a parent and a child. If your mom say don't go out, and the devil is telling you, well, go out, you're just gonna have, like, when you go out there, your friends are gonna be happy. Sure, when you go out, your friends are gonna be happy, but you've also been disobedient to your mom. So sometimes when these ideas come to your head, it doesn't always have to be evil thoughts with a guy with pointy horns here every time. It could simply just be something that the devil knows that you could desire, and that's what he'll present to you. That's all it takes. And now you think it's your own idea. Because look at this, he didn't even tell her to share it with her husband. She by herself went to give it to the man.
However, their newfound wisdom, the wisdom that is the awareness of good and evil, comes at a price. As a result of eating the fruit, they both experience shame, and through this, find themselves hastily sewing fig leaves together to hide their private parts. It shows the depth of how shameful the two must have felt, but despite being described here as husband and wife, they still feel mightily guilty about being naked in front of each other. Another interesting thing to take note of is that the serpent knew Adam and Eve wouldn't die, as a result of eating the fruit from the tree of knowledge. Could it be that the serpent was bluffing, or did the serpent have some greater knowledge of God's plan? As stated earlier, many believe that the serpent...
I do believe that both the devil and Adam and Eve, all of them thought they were gonna die physically. I don't think the devil knew that the kind of death that God was referring to.
It was Lucifer, for Lucifer was once very close to God, close enough that he may have been privy to this particular bit of information. Others believe that God had orchestrated this whole thing, that he lied to Adam and Eve about the fruit being fatal, and that he made the serpent say the opposite, just to see if humans would be loyal to him. Or perhaps the serpent was just that much of a wicked creature, that it believed Adam and Eve would die from eating the fruit.
Absolutely, that's what happened. That's what I believe happened. He wanted them dead and gone,
but lied to them in the hopes of seeing them perish. It is also only when the serpent tells Adam and Eve that,
worst case scenario, it already happened to Lucifer. He already fell from heaven, lost it all because he desired to be like God. So he knew that whatever was going to happen to them was going to be bad.
You will be like God, knowing good and evil, that they decide to eat from the tree. I'm reminded of an old quote that once said, everyone's got a price, and it seems like for Adam and Eve, their price was to be like God. Whilst one may have seen this in a flattering light, it also highlights man's ambition, that he wants to be the most powerful, that he wants to rule the world, that he wants to be the most high, something that...
Which is, I mean, well, there's two things to it. Number one, being like God, ruling over everything. If it was just Adam and Eve, they will both eat the apple, they will all rule over everything. They already had that. How can you deceive someone with something that they already have? That's when you have no self-awareness, because God gave them the power to rule over everything. Everything. In fact, even that tree of knowledge of good and evil, they were probably the ones that were trimming it, cutting it, getting rid of the bad ones. Well, I don't think the animals are allowed to eat from that tree either, but still, they had rule over everything. If this tree was supposed to make them be like God, God has dominion over everything, everything including Adam and Eve, right? So now, if Adam and Eve eat of this tree, there's nobody for them to be more, that they'll be less than. It's still just two of them. You're eating something to be the same way you are already. Such a crazy thing. And this happens so many times today in this world.
That may have been eerily reminiscent to God as one such as Lucifer, yet another being he had given his utmost trust to. If you think about it, it's almost no wonder God allows some of the calamities to happen to man throughout the Bible, given that everyone seems to end up betraying him in some way. Soon after they eat from the tree, God comes looking for them and calls out to them, but the two try to hide amongst the trees of the garden.
Let me continue from where he stopped. Unless you guys would rather the commentary of the other guy with his UK accent over mine. Well, you're getting mine unless you ask otherwise. So when God does find them, Adam tells him that they hid because he was scared of being found naked. To which God answers, "Who told you that you were naked? Because you've always been naked, so now all of a sudden you're telling me that you're naked and that's why you're hiding? What changed?" Realizing that Adam is aware of his nakedness and his shame, he immediately comes to the conclusion that Adam has betrayed him and eaten from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Adam pretty much snitches on Eve right away. He says, "The woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree and I ate it." Here it seems that Adam tries to shift the blame onto Eve, given that he doesn't actually accept responsibility for eating the fruit himself. Speaking of accountability, that's one of the major issues of, it's easier to blame everybody else and everything else. Here Adam comes across as a child trying to blame his sibling for stealing cookies from the jar. Although he does at least confess to eating the fruit, God then immediately turns his fury upon Eve, saying, "What is this you have done?" To which Eve replies, "Well, the serpent deceived me and I ate." Comes to Adam, "Adam, what did you do?" Adam says, "Man, this woman that you gave me is the one that's responsible." "Woman, what did you do?" "Man, this serpent." Everybody's trying to shift the blame to someone else, It's interesting because it's not like they're trying to own their actions here, as if they didn't know they did something bad. So they knew that they did something bad, and now they're trying to say please, it's not my fault. So that means even when they were taking these actions, they knew that what they were doing was wrong. They just did it anyways. Because it would have been a different story if they're coming up and they're like, "Well, you said we were gonna die and we're not dead, so we kind of just figured that you were lying to us." And that's not the way they came. That's not the way they came about it. It is, you told us not to do something. We are supposed to respect you. We're supposed to obey you, and we decided to do something different.
Different promises. Here, Adam comes across as a child, trying to blame his sibling for stealing cookies from the jar.
Sorry, I already read that part. So Eve's reply is a little bit more honest than Adam's, for she seems to be a bit more concise in her response, simply telling God, "Yes, I was deceived, and yes, I ate the fruit." Unlike Adam, she doesn't try to throw her spouse under the bus and appears to take responsibility for her actions, telling God exactly what happened. Is that how that played out? Let me read it real quick. Let's check it out. Oh, she said, "The serpent deceived me and I ate it." Oh, wow. Wow, that's interesting. I never looked at it that way. See, the way I just explained it, like, oh, she just passed on the blame to the serpent, but it's not. The way she responds is different. She's acknowledging that she was deceived, and this is the reason why, like, I wish Plur was here so I could, like, read this in context for her, because this is the reason why I'm saying men and women are different, and they approach things differently, they receive things differently. All, like, there's differences, you know, and that's so interesting. She's like, well, I got deceived. I ate what you said I shouldn't eat. Like, that's such a... If anything, this is the kind of answer that people would say that a man would give, as opposed to a woman. Wow. Like, look at the way Adam spoke. The woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it. I actually want to see if this some word is actually in the actual Hebrew, because that's so bad. That's so bad. Wow. Okay. God then turns to the serpent and tells him, because you have done this, cursed are you. Because at the end of the day, before God asked all these questions, he already knew what went down. Let's be real. God then turns to the serpent and tells him, because you have done this, because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and all wild animals. You will crawl on your belly and you will eat dust all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head and you will strike his heel. There's so much more to this verse, to this part of this verse, but maybe one day when we see it come up again, we'll look into what this verse actually means. Because I will put enmity between you and the woman, between the serpent and the woman, and between your offspring, the offspring of the serpent, and the offspring of Eve. He, singular, one person. Oh, wait, this one.
and all wild animals. You will fall on your belly, and you will eat dust all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman.
I wonder if this guy's gonna actually talk about what I'm saying about what this means later on. But let's keep going, because last part I read was, he will crush your head and you will strike his heel. When he talks about this at first, it seems like it's specific. Like, because first of all, it says between you and the woman, so this would be a her, but then it says the offspring is gonna be a he, not a she, and it says that offspring, that specific offspring is what will do this, is what this now talks about in the last part. Very significant, but one day we'll go into what that means. I'll make your pains in childbearing very severe. With painful labor, you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. This is when he was now referring to Eve and Eve's punishment, because they're already given the serpent's punishment. And then when we look at Adam's punishment, in contrast, it certainly doesn't add up. Perhaps you might say that Adam got the lighter serving of God's wrath because Adam was not the instigator of the sin. It was, after all, not he who took the fruit, nor he who offered the fruit to anyone else. You might also say that as the firstborn, Adam was God's favorite. Nah, I wouldn't say that. Notice how God gives Adam the honor of naming the animals, and even gives him a companion in the first place because he was lonely. Yeah, but I understand. Let's look at the punishment. God does not appear to give Eve anything at all, and shows her no favoritism or even an inkling that he cherishes her in the same way. Perhaps then this is why we see Adam's punishment as merely an inconvenience as opposed to an excruciating pain. Now, I mean, I would agree with this, that what Eve did was definitely more severe, because not only was she deceived, she also deceived her husband. You know, like, when you look at like intention, is always very important. Alright, so because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree about which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you shall eat, and of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth to you. You know, you talk about like punishment, and it's interesting that he says a certain thing to man, like, because I guess he's talking about Adam, Eve, and the serpent specifically, not men, women, and the devil's punishment, I guess. So in that regard, like, this specific man, what did he have to go through? That's what we're looking at here. So we'll just keep reading. Cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread until you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken, you are dust, and to dust you shall return. I mean, to say that the only way that you're going to be able to eat is by you suffering for it. I mean, childbirth is, from what I know, excruciating pain. I agree. Happens maybe 10 times in your life, but when it comes to eating, you eat all day, every day. It's a constant reminder of what you've done wrong every time you want to eat, you know. So I understand what he's saying, like the level of the pain for the woman is a lot, but it's a different perspective of looking at one big thing happening once and small things happening every time. You can also look at it in that way. The quantity is the quantity can, you know, make it equal. I think he's describing something personally now.
One day,
that's there.
He will perish. Adam is merely told to fend for himself, something that both men and women.
He's not told to fend for himself, but I understand what he's trying to say, because that's the thing. He's talking about men and women and not just Adam. It gets really tricky.
Men are capable of doing. We are all responsible for feeding ourselves at a certain point, and perhaps this is symbolic for where we leave our parents and caregivers and set out on our own to forge our own paths. Perhaps by this, Adam's betrayal of God was inevitable, for it is outside of the home, or the Garden of Eden, that mankind's destiny begins to really manifest. With the perfection of the Garden of Eden, it would have been hard for mankind to grow, given that everything would have been done for us, and in this, we would have remained the same, perhaps mere pets for God, that exist merely to tend to his garden, as Adam did. Another reason why Adam's punishment isn't even that bad is that Adam was created to work anyway.
You know, it's interesting when he uses the word pest. It almost sounds like pets, rather. It almost sounds like something that's negative, until you think about your dog in your house and whether that dog is happy in your house when he's treated well, food is provided for him, he's just enjoying, you take him for walks. It seems like a bad deal until you realize like your dog doesn't think it's a bad deal, but because you don't want to think of yourself as a dog, then there's it's a little tricky. But yeah,
God seems to punish Adam by forcing him to do hard labor, but labor is what Adam had been created for in the first place, in that he was asked.
No, labor is not what is this guy saying though? Because what Adam was, I guess he's saying toiling, like attending to the ground, and it's by your sweat that you will toil, it is different. That I think he has a little bit of a misunderstanding here, because most likely the way that they're differentiating it is, before it was attend to the ground. The ground is gonna bring up its fruit by itself, it's going to ripen by itself, it's going to do all these things, rain is going to pour, you just have to come in there, walk around, eat this, move this away. It's different from you have to go and plant the seed yourself, you have to find the seed yourself, all these things by yourself. It's different. That's not what he was doing before.
Asked to tend to the Garden of Eden. Admittedly, this task was far less strenuous than, say, raising crops on a cursed land, but it is still within Adam's ability to survive in these conditions. He isn't subjected to the harshities of childbirth and isn't forced to compromise his independence by becoming ruled by another, but instead is forced to work a little harder. In a way, God gives Adam an opportunity to become better than he was before. Whilst we've spoken about the fallibilities of Adam and Eve in that they were both led astray, are we being too harsh on them? Many of us often criticize Adam and Eve for being tempted so easily, but is it entirely their fault? If you think about it, God made Adam and Eve without the understanding of good and evil, and so when they met the serpent, they probably weren't able to decipher that the serpent was of an evil nature.
Let me just keep listening.
Foreboding in his words, and would most likely not have been suspicious of him, for they knew not of evil. Through this, the serpent's words were as neutral as perhaps God's were to Adam and Eve, and so it's possible that whilst they ate the fruit, they did not do so out of ambition to be like God, but merely because they didn't see anything wrong with it.
That's not possible, because God gave them an instruction, says don't do this. So they did not know evil, but they knew disobedience. I would like to figure out what the definition of the word evil is, because does good and evil actually mean right and wrong? Let me look up, let me just Google that real quick. Let's see what ChatGPT is gonna say. I should actually ask this to Gemini. The things that I end up searching as a result of this. Wait, no, this is Gemini, right? Let me check Gemini real quick. Yeah, you can't always use good to describe what's right. Like, they don't always work. Right might not always work in all the scenarios, but it's an interesting thing, because if they say they didn't know good or evil, they knew obedience. And to know obedience is to do or not do. And you know, that's actually something I'm going to discuss that with my wife and see what she thinks of it as well, because pretty much if you say they don't know good and evil, to know that means and you say good and evil is right and wrong, then that means they did not understand when God said it is right for you to not eat of this tree and it's right for you to eat of this tree. Or it's wrong for you to eat of these three. That means they couldn't understand that concept, which doesn't make sense.
Whilst God does specifically tell them not to eat from the tree, I guess we have to cut them some slack, given that Adam and Eve would have had the innocence and gullibleness of children. You can't get mad at a child if they were to make such a mistake, because the child has never had that experience before. The child has not become wary of the dangers around him, and the child is dependent on the advice and intentions of the adults.
But Eve understood death to the point where she knew it was something that she didn't want to happen to her. So the only reason she ate the fruit was because she was told that she wouldn't die. So she understood. So this is actually a very important topic to like look into, just to have a proper understanding, so that you don't like you don't misrepresent the position of what the Bible is saying.
Of their character. It is through this that we can view the story of Adam and Eve as a story of growth, in that we all make mistakes and we all endure the punishments of those mistakes in an effort.
That is true. That is completely true.
Learn from them. Notice that Adam and Eve go on to live righteous lives after their folly, because like us, they learn what they have done is wrong and are able to make amends and become better for it. Perhaps if God had given them a second chance, they might very well have kept away from the tree with more effort. Although you might also understand that God boots Adam and Eve from the garden out of caution, because he no longer trusts them. Furthermore, he expels them from paradise because he knows they now have the knowledge of good and evil, and isn't sure which path Adam and Eve intend to take. Notice he says in Genesis 3:22, "See, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil," furthermore establishing that man has become something new, something that is capable of making its own decisions and deciding its own fate. God is also weary that now man knows he can gain more by eating the forbidden fruit, he might be tempted to do so again, only this time from another tree, the tree of life. God tells us, "And now he might reach out of his hand and take also from the tree of life, and eat, and live forever." Here, God is aware that man could become even more powerful should he remain in the Garden of Eden, and recognizes the potential for man to do more wrong against him by consuming the fruits he had told them not to. He gets a glimpse of this new nature of man after having acquired the knowledge of good and evil, in that man is no longer subservient to his every word, but instead more likely to turn on him and use his own gifts to further themselves and become just like him, maybe enough like him to challenge him, as Lucifer once did. We are told, "Therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden, to till the ground from which he was taken. He drove out the man."
Oh wait, we're already in Genesis 23? No way.
"And at the east of the Garden
I think
of
you
Eden,
missed a chapter.
he placed a cherubim, and a sword flaming and turning to guard the way of the tree of life." Here
I
we
think
see
this is
Adam
either
and
chapter
Eve
3 or
banished
chapter
from
4.
the Garden of Eden, and that God isn't taking any chances with them getting back in. He even employs a cherubim, an angelic attendant of God, to stand guard with a flaming sword, so as to ward man away should he ever work his way back to paradise in search of the tree of life and its fruit. This is an often overlooked aspect of the story of Adam and Eve, in that the tree of life and what it represents is seldom ever talked about in great detail.
Yeah.
It is the one other tree that Adam and Eve do not get to taste from, nor are
Well, yeah, I guess from the fact that it says which they shouldn't eat of it, we know they never did, but they could have, according to the
even
instructions.
seen to acknowledge. It's probable that on the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve did not consider their mortality, given that they were so well cared for and had their every desire met, and so the tree of life and its fruit, which granted immortality, did not have immediate appeal. But after eating from the tree of knowledge and gaining the understanding that living forever would make them more than human, and in essence similar to God in that they would become immortal, they would eventually yearn to have it. It is why God takes such precautions to keep man away from it after they have been cast out, because the tree of life would offer man a power that perhaps no man should ever inherit, a power that made him as infinite as...
And I also feel like this story is also synonymous to what happened. Not exact, like it's possible that it might be synonymous.
God himself.
A way for us to understand not exactly how it happened.
Extensive investigation, which has led to some very different elaborations. Both characters appear in other religions outside of Christianity, and whilst they have near enough the same role, there are some stark differences, which we'll speak about in a moment. Even from a Christian perspective, however, there exist many different ideas as to what the fall of man represents, who Adam and Eve were, what they themselves represented, and also who was to blame for their original sin. A very early Christian interpretation held Eve as the sole perpetrator for the original sin, and would proceed to hold all women to be sinners, given that it was Eve who tempted Adam into eating the fruit. As we've seen in the Bible, Eve doesn't actually appear to tempt Adam, but more so hands the fruit to him, and as I mentioned, Adam makes the decision for himself. A prolific Christian author from Carthage in the 1st century once said of women that they were the devil's gateway, and would condemn them for the sin that Eve had committed. The idea of women being inherently evil was echoed throughout history, and we see inklings of this permeate as late as the 15th and 16th
Inherently evil is crazy.
century, where witchcraft trials were still being conducted, something that Heinrich Kramer, the author of the Malleus Maleficarum, a well-known treatise on witchcraft, implicates that Eve's sin justified the persecution of witches, most of which were of course women. Eve's sin had major repercussions in the real world for women, for not only were they to be the attachments to their husbands, as Eve becomes an attachment to Adam in that she is ruled by him, but they were often deemed as untrustworthy, or prone to seducing men to sin, as Eve supposedly did to Adam. We can see this in the way the serpent also takes on the form of a woman in many contemporary artworks, the very form of the woman becoming a symbol for evil. Likewise, there existed a belief based on Christian doctrine that because Adam had sinned, all of that sin became hereditary, and that every man that was ever born was born into sin, and that he had to await redemption. By this, no man was born free, and was also born with an inherent wickedness that he had no choice but to live with until he found salvation. As time went by, however, baptisms were introduced, and this was thought to be a ceremony that washed away this innate sin that was acquired by Adam and passed down, allowing man to live his life without the burden of Adam's folly. Islam, however, actually has a bit of a different take on Adam and Eve, in that there isn't a notion of Eve seducing Adam to sin. In the Quran, Adam and Eve are both equally responsible for the consumption of the fruit, and as a result are cast out from the garden, where they spend 40 days apart to repent. The idea of original sin doesn't have much of a foothold in Islam, because it appears that both Adam and Eve are both forgiven by Allah for their betrayal. In fact, we later see Allah command his angels to bow before Adam, which invokes Iblis to refuse, causing him to be cast out. The fact that Allah asks his angels to bow before Adam serves as a symbol that Allah has truly forgiven mankind, and that he supports the humans despite their defiance of him in the first place.
I think that's such an interesting outlook, just because even though this claim is about there's no original sin, everybody, according to that book, is still going to hell anyways, most likely going to hell. So for
another
what then?
take on the Adam and Eve story is from Swahili culture, where Adam demonstrates heroics and selflessness. After Eve bites from the fruit, Adam chooses to take a bite as well, not because he is deceived, but because he wishes to follow Eve and protect her, even if this means going against God. I'm sure there are many more interpretations of the Adam and Eve story, and I'm sure many of you have more ideas as to what this story represents. So do let me know your ideas in the comments below, and as always, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe.
I'll give it a thumbs up. Oh, that's true. I was supposed to make my Patreon stuff, but all right, well, I enjoyed today's session looking into the story of Adam and Eve. Like I said, next Wednesday I'm probably gonna look into the story of, I think I'm gonna skip the Cain and Abel story and go to Abraham right away. Maybe some other time we could look at that one at some point. But thank you guys for hanging out, watching the stream today. Hope you guys had learned something. I will see you all tomorrow. Have yourselves an amazing evening. Peace and love, man. Take it easy. Bye-bye.